So we're all familiar with movie remakes and reboots, more often than not being lesser versions of the material they're trying to live up to. But the same thing also applies to video games. I'll say this though, remakes for video games turn out much better most of the time considering there are more layers to them than how they look. The way they control and how the games play can be drastically updated for modern times. So what I want to do is compare the original Metal Gear Solid to its 2004 remake, The Twin Snakes. The original version from 1998 is marvelous with its story, characterization, and the way it looks. Lots of what made this game good did carry over to its remake. However, despite the 6-year gap and better hardware, the remake was lacking in terms of mainly performance and presentation, but made a technical leap in the gameplay department. Now, the original game did well with what it had for things like combat, stealth, and traversal, but by today's standards, it all seems a tad primitive. It was definitely ahead of its time when it first came out, don't get me wrong, but it could have been more precise in the controls. The newer game took a lot of new gameplay aspects from Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty and put them in Twin Snakes. The improvements are more aware enemy AI, having to hide bodies to avoid unwanted searches, leaping and diving over rails, and first-person aiming for all weapons. For Sons of Liberty, these changes were seen as a welcome addition, since they built off what the original game set down and added to the realism of it all. And contrary to what people think, the new controls and added mechanics in Twin Snakes made the game even better than the original, mainly when firing a weapon. Snake could only stand still and shoot in third person, which meant your shots wouldn't be all that accurate, but the first person aiming in the newer one is a godsend. Take the revolver ocelot fight, for example. In the original, you were stuck running around in circles taking shots at one another, and this isn't a bad boss fight, but it's much better in the remake, where, thanks to the new aiming, you can shoot the steam pipes on the walls to stun Ocelot, and fire at him before he recovers. It's little things like this that make small parts of the game even more enjoyable. So the game's story in both versions are beat for beat exactly the same, but that's not a real bad thing, it's a great story. The thing is, the remake has the same sequences play out in the exact same order of the first game. That's something remakes shouldn't do. Now, mixing up where you go, what you need, and who you fight, that would be a welcome change. Maybe have a brief section of the game where you play as someone else who's critical to the story, but we see it from their point of view.
Someone like Gray Fox or Meryl, who were both present at Shadow Moses at the same time as Snake.
Who do they fight? How did they get there? It would be something just as engaging and would add more layers to the already fantastic story. Around the time the remake came out, action films such as The Matrix were massively popular, so to cash in on that, the better hardware was used to make more action-packed cutscenes to attract newcomers. However, this made a lot of fans not like this game due to how unrealistic it came off as. One scene in particular from the original is when the main character, Snake, comes across a hallway of dead guards. Now the player can do nothing but wonder how this happened. After all, the imagination does most of the work, and that's what makes this scene so effective. But in the remake, we see exactly how it's done, and it's cool and all, but the shock of finding this right after it happened with no warning is lost. Some scenes even drag on for a lot longer than they need to, essentially wasting a lot of the player's time. An example that I just cannot stand is the scene where Meryl is mortally wounded by a sniper. See, originally, she finds out very quickly she's in someone's crosshairs and is just frozen with fear, knowing she can't do anything. But in the remake, she and Snake just play around with the laser for like a full minute, almost as if they're trying to figure out what it is, and then she gets shot. It's so pointlessly drawn out, while it was quick and to the point and their reactions made sense before. So overall, while not being inherently terrible, a lot is lost with this game's conversion. But something is sort of gained as well. To some, it might not matter how well it plays comparatively, but it's clear that a large chunk of it is all flash and no substance. And that statement pretty much sums up most recent movie reboots and remakes pretty well.